You need to leave. Right now.
My fob just granted access. On what grounds?
Dress code. Hygiene issue.
Funny. Everyone walking past me is dressed the same.
Refuse service, that's alright.
Then document why, because I'm a senior state inspector and this ends today.
The gym was supposed to close in 4 hours. Instead, thanks to me, it would be shut down permanently in 4 days. The man standing in the lobby wasn't just another customer being denied entry. I am Marcus Thorne, a black man who also happens to be a senior state inspector with the authority to shut down any athletic facility in the state of Colorado. The gym's manager, the security guard, and the owner were about to learn a very expensive lesson about discrimination. What makes this story different is that I wasn't looking for a confrontation. I wasn't recording for TikTok. I wasn't trying to go viral. I was literally just trying to hit the weights after a long day of inspections. But what happened next would cost this gym $840,000, result in criminal charges for 3 people, and expose years of systematic discrimination. Before I continue, where are you tuning in from? Drop your city or state in the comments. And if you've ever been denied service somewhere, you had every right to be hit that subscribe button. This story gets intense. I had been a state athletic inspector for 11 years. My job was simple, but critical. I inspected gyms, CrossFit boxes, martial arts studios, any facility that offered high-intensity training. I checked equipment safety, verified trainer certifications, reviewed injury protocols, and ensured facilities followed state regulations. It was a Tuesday evening around 6:15 p.m. I had spent the entire day doing inspections at 3 different facilities across the Denver metro area. I was beat. My back was stiff from sitting in my truck all day. I wanted to get a lift in before heading home to my family. I was a member at Iron Summit Fitness, a mid-sized gym about 10 minutes from my house. I'd been a member for 8 months, paid my fees on time every month, and never had a single problem. I'd go 2 or 3 times a week, lift, shower, and leave. Simple routine, no drama. Until today. I walked in, wearing my usual workout gear, basketball shorts, and a standard tank top, carrying my gym bag. The front desk was staffed by someone I didn't recognize, a young guy probably in his early 20s. He looked up as I approached. The vibe shifted instantly. I swiped my membership key fob at the reader. It beeped. Access granted. The screen showed my name, my membership status, and my photo. Everything was current and valid. The desk attendant looked at the screen, then looked at me, then reached over and pressed a button on his console. "I'm sorry, sir, but you can't come in today." I was confused. My membership was active. The reader had literally just granted me access. Why not? My membership is current. We're experiencing some technical difficulties with the system. You'll need to come back another day. I looked at the screen. It clearly showed my membership was active. No error messages, no technical difficulties. I pointed this out. The attendant got flustered. "I need to check with my manager. Can you wait here?" I said, "Sure." I stood by the desk and watched. Other members walked past me, swiped their fobs, and went into the gym without any issues. No technical difficulties for them. All of them were white. 5 minutes passed. Then the manager came out. His name tag said, Brad Miller, General Manager. Brad didn't introduce himself, didn't offer a handshake, just walked up and said, "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." Have you ever been in a situation where you knew something was wrong but couldn't prove it yet? Type yes if you have. I stayed calm. Why? My membership is valid. I just want to work out. We reserve the right to refuse service. On what grounds? Brad didn't have an answer ready. He hesitated, then stammered something about dress code violations. I looked down at my outfit. Black shorts, grey tank top, Nikes, standard gym wear. Exactly what dozens of other guys in the gym were wearing at that exact moment. My clothes violate the dress code. How? The shirt is too loose. It's a hygiene issue. My tank top was completely standard. It wasn't a stringer. It wasn't ripped. It was nothing different from what I'd worn to this gym at least a dozen times before. I've worn this top here multiple times. Nobody's ever said anything. Well, we're saying something now. This is when I made a choice. I could leave, cancel my membership, and never come back. That's what most people would do. Avoid the confrontation, move on with life, find another gym. But I had been doing inspections all day. I'd been checking facilities for code violations, safety issues, and discriminatory practices. I knew what discrimination looked like. I knew what a pretext sounded like. And now I was standing in a gym I paid to access, being told I couldn't enter for reasons that made absolutely no sense. Something wasn't right, and my job had trained me to notice when something wasn't right. I'd like to speak with the owner, I said. Brad smirked. The owner isn't available. Then I'll wait. You can't wait here. You need to leave the premises. I'm a paying member. I'm not disrupting anything. I'm standing in the lobby. I have every right to be here. That's when Brad called security. The security guard's name was Kevin O'Connor. A massive guy, probably 6 feet 5 inches, looked like he'd been hired specifically to intimidate people. He walked over with his hand resting on his belt, trying to look authoritative. Sir, you need to leave. I took a breath. This was escalating stupidly. I wanted to de-escalate. I'm a member here. I paid my membership fee. I just want to use the gym. You're trespassing. Leave now or we'll call the police. How am I trespassing if I'm a paying member? Kevin moved closer, using his size to try to intimidate me. I'm not going to ask again. And that's when I said the words that changed everything. Before you do anything else, you should know I'm Marcus Thorne. I'm a senior inspector with the State Athletic Commission. And if you physically remove a state official who is being discriminated against, you are going to have much bigger problems than you think. You could see the moment it registered on Kevin's face. The confidence drained away. He looked at Brad. The manager had gone pale. I want to see some ID, Brad said, his voice shaky now. I pulled out my state credentials, official government identification with my photo, title, and authority clearly displayed. Brad stared at it. His hands were actually trembling. Now, I said, my voice still calm, but with steel underneath. I'm going to ask you a direct question, and I want you to think very carefully before you answer. Why exactly am I being denied access to this facility? Silence. Neither Brad nor Kevin wanted to say it, but I already knew. Is it because I'm black? Is that why you suddenly have a dress code problem? Because I've been coming here for 8 months, and this is the first time anyone said anything about what I'm wearing. Brad tried to deny it. No, it's not that at all. Then what is it? More silence. Here's what's going to happen, I told them. I'm going to file a formal complaint with the State Athletic Commission tomorrow morning. I'm also going to file a discrimination complaint with the State Civil Rights Division, and I'm going to request a full audit of this facility's membership practices, including who gets denied entry and why. Brad's face went from pale to ghost white. That's not necessary. This was just a misunderstanding. Was it? Then why am I being asked to leave? You're not. You can stay. Please use the gym. No, I don't think I will, because now I'm wondering how many other people you've done this to. How many other members have been turned away for dress code violations or technical difficulties that only seem to apply to certain people? I turned and walked out, but I wasn't done. Not even close. Do you think businesses should face serious consequences for discrimination? Let us know your thoughts. The next morning at 9 a.m., I walked into the State Athletic Commission office and filed a formal complaint, not as an angry customer, but as an inspector who had personally witnessed discriminatory practices at a licensed facility. The complaint triggered an immediate investigation. Within 48 hours, 2 other inspectors were sent to Iron Summit Fitness to conduct a surprise audit. What they found was worse than I had suspected. The gym had a membership of about 1,200 people. Of those, only 47 were Black, 32 were Latino, and 28 were Asian. In a county where the population was 31% non-white, the gym's membership was 91% white. That alone wasn't necessarily proof of discrimination. Maybe the gym was in a predominantly white neighborhood. Maybe their marketing didn't reach diverse communities. But then the inspectors started interviewing former members and people who tried to join. They found 23 people who had been denied membership or had their memberships cancelled for various reasons. 19 of them were people of color. The reasons given ranged from didn't fit the gym culture to dress code violations to disruptive behavior that was never actually documented. The inspectors pulled security footage from the gym. They reviewed hours and hours of tape showing who was asked to leave, who was warned about dress code, who was told they couldn't work out that day. The pattern was undeniable. White members in muscle shirts, no problem. Black men in standard gym wear, dress code violation. White members being loud and slamming weights, that's fine. Black members talking at normal volume, too disruptive. The discrimination wasn't subtle, it was systematic, and it had been going on for at least 3 years. The investigation also revealed something else. Brad Miller, the manager, had been sending group texts to staff about certain members. The texts used coded language like urban clientele and not our target demographic. One text explicitly said to find reasons to turn away anyone who doesn't fit the vibe we're going for. The owner, a man named Richard Sterling, claimed he knew nothing about this. He said Brad had been making unauthorized decisions, that this wasn't company policy, that he was shocked and appalled. But the investigators found emails from Sterling to Brad praising him for maintaining standards and when keeping the membership base where we want it. In one email, Sterling explicitly mentioned that the gym needed to avoid becoming too diverse because it might drive away their core customers. Every bit of evidence was documented, every email, every text, every video clip, every interview. The case against Iron Summit Fitness wasn't just strong, it was overwhelming. The State Athletic Commission had several options. They could fine the gym, they could put them on probation, they could require training and policy changes. They chose the harshest option available. They revoked the gym's athletic facility license. Without that license, Iron Summit Fitness couldn't legally operate. They had 30 days to shut down and return all membership fees. The shutdown was announced 11 days after I had been denied entry. The local news picked up the story. "Gym closed for discrimination" was the headline. The story detailed the investigation, the evidence, the pattern of bias. Richard Sterling tried to fight it. He hired lawyers, filed appeals, claimed the commission was overreaching. Every appeal was denied. The evidence was too clear, the violations were too severe. But the civil case was where things got really expensive. I filed a personal lawsuit for discrimination. So did 14 other former members who had been kicked out or denied entry. The cases were combined into a class action. The lawsuit wasn't just against the gym. It named Brad Miller personally, Kevin O'Connor personally, and Richard Sterling personally. When you discriminate as part of your job, you can be held individually liable. The plaintiffs weren't asking for millions each. We were asking for actual damages, emotional distress, and punitive damages designed to send a message. The case went to trial 8 months later. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. They found for the plaintiffs on every single count. They awarded the class action $840,000 in total damages. I personally received $125,000. The other plaintiffs received amounts ranging from $35,000 to $95,000, depending on their individual cases. But the money was just part of it. Brad Miller was charged with violating state civil rights laws, criminal charges, not just civil. He pleaded guilty to avoid trial and received probation, community service, and a permanent mark on his record. Kevin O'Connor was fired and couldn't find security work anywhere after the case became public. Turns out, employers don't want to hire security guards with discrimination judgments against them. Richard Sterling lost his business, lost $840,000, and lost his reputation. He tried to open another gym 2 years later in a different county. Local activists protested, news outlets covered it. He closed after 6 weeks. The building that housed Iron Summit Fitness stayed empty for 14 months before being converted into a community recreation center that explicitly welcomed everyone, regardless of race, religion, or background. I continued my work as an inspector. I never sought publicity for the case. I didn't do interviews. I didn't try to become the face of anti-discrimination activism. I just kept doing my job, inspecting gyms, checking safety standards, making sure facilities followed the law. But something changed in how I did inspections. I started paying closer attention to who was using the facilities, who was being turned away, who was being treated differently. I started asking more questions about membership demographics and denial rates. And I found problems. Not everywhere. Most gyms were fine. But I found enough issues that the Athletic Commission created a new protocol specifically for identifying discriminatory practices during routine inspections. 3 years after the Iron Summit case, my inspection protocols had led to 7 other gyms being investigated for discrimination. 4 were fined, 2 were put on probation, 1 lost its license. The protocols became a model for other states. Athletic commissions across the country adopted similar standards, all because I refused to just walk away when I was denied access to a gym I had every right to use. Have you ever stood up against discrimination when you saw it? Drop a comment with your story. There's a deeper lesson in all this that goes beyond one gym and one inspector. Discrimination often hides behind policies that sound neutral. Dress code violations. Doesn't fit our culture. Technical difficulties. These phrases can be used to mask bias while maintaining plausible deniability. But when you look at patterns, when you examine who gets cited for these violations and who doesn't, the bias becomes clear. And once it's clear, once it's documented, once it's undeniable, there are consequences. Iron Summit Fitness thought they could quietly maintain a predominantly white membership by selectively enforcing rules. They thought as long as they didn't explicitly say, "We don't want black people here," they could get away with it. They were wrong. The $840,000 judgment, the criminal charges, the business closure, the reputation damage, all of it could have been avoided if they had just treated everyone equally, followed their own rules consistently, and remembered that discrimination is illegal regardless of how cleverly you try to disguise it. My case also highlighted something important about standing up for your rights. I wasn't a lawyer. I wasn't a professional activist. I was a state employee with a gym membership who recognized discrimination when I saw it and refused to accept it. I used the resources available to me, the authority of my position, the weight of state law, and I held people accountable. That's how change happens. Not always through viral videos and public outrage, but sometimes through quiet determination and working within the system. The former members who joined the class action lawsuit mostly moved on with their lives. Some used the settlement money for education, for bills, for savings. A few donated portions to civil rights organizations. One woman who had been kicked out of Iron Summit for aggressive behavior that security footage showed was just her doing an intense workout, used her $48,000 settlement to open a small personal training business. She specifically marketed to communities that had been excluded from mainstream gyms. Last anyone heard, her business was thriving. Richard Sterling declared bankruptcy 2 years after the judgment. The $840,000 settlement, combined with the lost revenue from the gym closure, destroyed him financially. He blamed me. He blamed the state. He blamed everyone except himself. In an interview with a local podcast, Sterling said the whole thing was blown out of proportion. He said he wasn't racist. He just wanted to maintain a certain atmosphere at his gym. He said people were too sensitive now. He never understood. Even after losing everything, he never got it. That's the real tragedy. Not that he lost his business, he deserved that. The tragedy is that he went through an entire legal process, saw the evidence of systematic discrimination, heard testimony from people who had been hurt by his policies, and still couldn't see that he'd done anything wrong. Some people never learn. They go to their graves believing they were persecuted for having standards, never recognizing that their standards were just bias dressed up in professional language. Brad Miller, the manager who had sent all those discriminatory texts, tried to find work after his conviction. He applied to several other gyms and fitness centers. None would hire him. His criminal record for civil rights violations made him unemployable in the industry. He eventually moved out of state and found work in retail management. He kept a low profile, avoided social media, tried to rebuild his life, but people who worked with him said he still didn't seem to understand what he'd done wrong. Kevin O'Connor, the security guard, had a harder time. With a discrimination judgment against him and no other marketable skills, he struggled to find any work. He bounced between low-wage jobs, never staying anywhere long. He tried to get back into security work a few times, but background checks kept revealing the Iron Summit case. Eventually, he left the area, entirely moving to a different state where fewer people knew about what happened. Neither Brad nor Kevin ever apologized to me or any of the other people they discriminated against. Neither one ever publicly acknowledged that what they did was wrong. That's the thing about discrimination. The people who perpetrate it often don't see themselves as doing anything wrong. They see themselves as maintaining standards, protecting their business, doing their job. They don't see the harm they cause because they've convinced themselves their actions are justified. I retired from the Athletic Commission last year after 19 years of service. I received a commendation for developing anti-discrimination inspection protocols that had been adopted by 23 states. At my retirement ceremony, I was asked what advice I'd give to people who face discrimination. I said this: document everything. Know your rights, use the resources available to you, and don't walk away just because standing up is uncomfortable. Change doesn't happen when we stay quiet. Simple advice, but effective. The building that used to be Iron Summit Fitness is now called the Community Fitness Center. Monthly memberships cost $25, significantly cheaper than Iron Summit's $89 rate. The facility is open to everyone. No arbitrary dress codes beyond basic decency, no selective enforcement, no coded language about who fits the culture. The membership is about 60% non-white, reflecting the actual demographics of the county. People of all backgrounds work out together without anyone being told they don't fit the vibe or the culture. That's what happens when you eliminate discrimination. You get an actual community. You get people of all backgrounds sharing a space, pursuing health and fitness without fear of being kicked out for arbitrary reasons. The new center has a plaque in the lobby. It doesn't mention Iron Summit or what happened there. It just says, everyone welcome, everyone respected, everyone equal. That's the legacy of my stand. Not just one gym shut down, not just one settlement paid, but a shift in how facilities think about inclusion, how they treat their members, how they enforce their policies. Other gyms in the area took notice. They reviewed their own practices. They trained staff on discrimination. They made sure their membership demographics reflected their communities. They didn't want to become the next Iron Summit. Fear of consequences drove some of that change, but so did genuine recognition that discrimination was wrong and bad for business. The Iron Summit case became a teaching moment. Law schools used it in civil rights classes. Business schools used it in ethics courses. Athletic administration programs used it as a case study in facility management. The core lesson was always the same. Discrimination has consequences. Legal consequences, financial consequences, reputational consequences, and those consequences are severe enough that they can destroy a business and end careers. If you found this story valuable, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you believe in accountability for discrimination, hit that subscribe button. These stories matter, and your support helps us keep telling them. Drop a comment and let us know what you think the penalties should be for businesses that discriminate. Are lawsuits enough, or should criminal charges be more common? Thanks for reading all the way through. Thanks for caring about justice. Thanks for believing that everyone deserves equal treatment, regardless of their race, background, or appearance. The day I was denied entry to Iron Summit Fitness, I could have just left. I could have cancelled my membership, found another gym, moved on with my life. Most people would have done exactly that. But I didn't. I stood my ground. I documented what happened. I used the authority of my position and the power of the law to hold people accountable. And because I did, 14 other people got justice. A discriminatory business was shut down. New protocols were created that protect people across 23 states. A community fitness center now serves everyone equally. That's the power of refusing to accept discrimination. That's what happens when one person decides that wrong is wrong and does something about it. The security footage from that Tuesday evening still exists. The gym's cameras captured every moment me being denied entry, Brad stammering about dress codes, Kevin trying to intimidate me revealing my credentials, and watching them realize what they'd done. That footage was played in court. It was shown to the jury. It was the evidence that made the $840,000 judgment possible. Sometimes justice needs documentation. Sometimes change needs evidence. Sometimes accountability needs proof that can't be denied or explained away. I provided all of that not by setting out to create a viral moment, but by simply refusing to accept unjust treatment and having the tools to fight back. See you in the next one.